Hello everyone, this is Kiran and today we are going to learn a lot more topic about MySQL. So in the previous session we learned how to create a table, insert data into the table, use of a select query to fetch different data, use where clause. Then we also saw group by and use of having clause along with group by. Then we saw order by to sort the data in the table, and we saw aggregate functions and a lot more things. Today we learn the usage of null keyword. So the null keyword can be used as a keyword and also as a value. So we'll see both the usages. So null is a very special keyword which is which you can see in as a results and also as a keyword. So that's what we are going to learn today, value and keyword. Okay, so first let's see null as a value. Okay, when can you see null? So let's say you're trying to enter any data into your table, and while your insertion you're not putting or inserting any value for a particular column. So in that case the automatic value which it takes is a null, is the null value. So that is null as a value. Okay, as a keyword we'll see, but let's take an example of null as a value first. So null is simply a placeholder, as in if you're not entering anything, it has to have something, right, on the as the table should be containing something. So that is null. So if you're not inserting anything, so it simply is a placeholder for the data that does not exist. Now while performing insert operations on table, there will be times when some of the fields will not be inserted. So in that case null will take a hold of that particular position or that particular place, right? So let me show you a query, but in the meanwhile you can just see the screen and the example. It looks like something like this, as in let's say there was no remarks entered, and null can only be inserted, or as in if you're not putting in anything, null can take care of it only if that particular column is not a primary key, because a primary key has to have not null and non-duplicate values. We'll read about primary key in the upcoming hours, but the thing is we have to make sure that the column for which you're not entering any value should not be a primary key, because if it is a primary key it will not allow you to enter a null entry there, as in you have to mandatorily enter, because that is what primary key is all about, right? So these are the few concepts which you have to take care in mind. So this positioning of null as entries, as values basically are called null, is called null as a value. Let me okay, before I show you a few concepts, null is not a data type. Yes, there is no data type associated with null, as in it is and it's not even a data type in itself. So it cannot be recognized as int, date or varchar or anything. Okay, arithmetic operations, as in addition, minus, multiplication with null, involving null, will always return null. As in don't expect that if you add 100 to null should give you 100. No. So you have to make sure that anything which you are, any arithmetic operations which you are performing with null should be returning a null result only. So that is one concept. And all aggregate functions affect only rows that do not have null values. Yeah, what is the meaning of this statement, the last statement? Aggregate functions we have seen like count, sum, max, min, average. So all the aggregate functions which we are applying on any of the columns will be affecting the rows which are having not null values. What do I mean when I say this? If you can just have a look on my screen for a few seconds, understand this table. So this is a table having membership number, full names, gender, date of birth, addresses, postal addresses, and then contact number, and then email. Now let's say some of the people doesn't have mobile numbers or no contact numbers for them. So if we are applying an aggregate function as in count, so we want to know that how many phone numbers are there with us right now. So it will not count the rows which are having null as the entry, because they actually, it's the correct result, isn't it? Like they will not calculate them because there is no mobile number. So count of star is going to calculate all the rows, isn't it, which is having entries for that column. So select count of which column? Contact number column from table name. If we are doing, it should return us the count as the sum of total rows, or count of total number of rows which are having mobile numbers. It will reject those rows which are not having anything, or which is having null as the entry. So there are three concepts which we saw: that null is not having any data type. It is not a data type. It cannot be categorized as int or varchar or date. Second concept was that if you're applying any arithmetic operations over null, as in with null, so it will return you null only as the result. And the third concept which we saw is that if you're applying any aggregate functions over a column having null entries, those aggregate functions will take care only of the rows which are having not null entries. It will not take care of the nulls, right? So this is what we saw here. What is not? Not is a negation operator, isn't it? We have already seen that. We know about AND gate, OR gate, and NOT gate. Not is no of something, right? So not of true is false, and not of false is true. So it's a negation operator. So not null is also a concept, because if you want to find out the rows which are not null, you want to only calculate the rows which are having some entries. So not null is also yet another criteria for doing searches, for finding things. Okay, so not null. So there will be cases when we will have to perform computations on a query results and return the values. So performing any arithmetic operations on column that doesn't, that is not null, or that is null. So you can have different requirements. So columns that have null value returns null results. In order to avoid such situations, we employ the use of not null. Example: suppose we want to create a table with certain fields that should always be supplied with values when inserting new rows in the table. So this is where we are going to learn about null as a keyword now. Like, how can we use null as not just an entry or a value, but also a query, as a keyword. So we'll see that, but let me give you an example of null as a value first. We'll go back to our table. We'll just do a select star first. I'll just quickly run a user database also. Oh, I'm so sorry. So I have to just do show databases. Let's see how. Okay, so it will show us. Okay, it's not trainings. I was running a wrong query. That's why I got that error in the beginning. I'll just use ineuron training. So now it's correct. You can see here. Now I'll just run a quick select star from table name. So that I can see all the entries in our table. Now let's say we want to insert, or we want to add a row, like we want to insert a value, let's say. So we'll run the insert query. Let's insert a 13th row. Insert into employee values. So as in, you have to insert so I have to write all the entries, all the column names here and the values here. So let's just write all the column names which you're trying to insert. Let's say ID we want to insert, yes. Then I want to insert first name and last name, of course. Email ID I have to insert. Let's say address I don't want to insert this time, okay? I'll just keep it like that. So salary I want to insert. So here I'll not be putting these actually. I should put these in the values actually. The quotes actually should not be here. First name, last name. So I'm just avoiding the address entry this time, okay? So salary I want to insert, and also department I want to insert, okay? Now in the values I have to fill in some values, whatever I want to. Department, let's put in some values. So for ID it will be 13, and then first name Shweta, last name Singh, and then there is email address, whatever. Address we are not entering, so we'll not, just leave it. And then salary will enter something, and then department, okay? Okay, so I have put the department as first like this, so I have to put it like that, okay? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns we are entering, but we have actual 7 columns, 7 number of columns. So I will simply run this and we'll see what happens in the address, okay? So when I so I've already inserted, my insertion is correct, you can see here 1 row affected. So now I'll be doing a select star from table, and I'll see if that particular row is inserted or not, right? So we'll do that. So when I'm doing it, my table listing is here. So you can see here, in place of address, the entry which got inside is null, because we did not enter address, right? We were not trying to enter address. So it will take it as null, because it cannot just show blank. So here it is null as value, okay? Now we'll do null as a keyword also. Let's go back to the PPT and see. So we were talking about not null. So not null are useful when we are actually creating tables. So let's say we're trying to create some table, okay? So here is the table, if you can see, employees, like our table. Let's say the table name is employees. Now it is in bracket, we have to mention all the column names along with the data type, we know that, right? But we can also use keywords, okay? So we'll learn how to create tables with keywords also today. Employee number is one column whose data type is int, and then space not null. That means you don't want the integers to be empty. You have to put in something, right? So that's the meaning of not null. All the employee number should be filled in. Okay, so that's what the meaning of not null here is. Then we have full names, which is varchar, and then there is a gender, which is again varchar, and that's it. So that's about the employees table. Now when you try to insert data into this table, let's say this table is created after running this particular query, that create table name, I'm so sorry, and then all these 3 columns you want trying to create a table, and now you're trying to insert a data. So when you do that, so let's say the insert query is something like this: insert into table name, and then you are only inserting data for 2 columns, which is full name and gender. You just left the employee number column here. Like I left address in our column, in our table, isn't it? I left the address, and that's why address was inserted as a null entry. But here what the insert query is like, it is not taking the employee number, but it's taking full name comma gender, and values it is inserting the name as T jobs and value of the gender, and the gender is male. So in this case it will be an error because you're trying to escape, or you're trying to not insert value for something which is a not null column. You just left employee number, but you cannot. You have to enter value mandatorily, because while creating the table, you have asked the database that it should be a table wherein the column, which is employee number, is a not null column. So if you're trying to insert value and not insert anything into that particular column, it will not work, because you have asked the table to be like that. So you have to make sure that any table, or while you're creating a table, if any of the columns is a not null column, then if you're trying to insert data, you have to mandatorily insert data for that column. Okay, so that's the kind of error you'll get, that this doesn't have a default value. The field employee number doesn't have a default value, so you have to put some values mandatorily. So that is how not null as a null as a keyword works. Okay, we'll also create our own table where we will write this keyword, and then we'll do the same thing to make it very clear. Okay, what else? Null keywords. So null can also be used as a keyword while performing Boolean operations on the values that include null. Is null or not null, both can be used. Okay, so example, you want to find out where the column name is null. So let's say you want to find out all the entries where the salary is null, as in suppose somebody's salary is not updated, so where the salary is null. Or maybe you want to find out all the rows in which the phone number is available, so phone number is not null. So column name, any column name of your choice, is null or is not null, or not null. So that's how null can be used as a keyword also, not just as a value. So both as a value and as a keyword, null should be working fine. So both of them do the Boolean comparisons, as in true, false, false, true. Now, before we move on, we have to use null as a keyword into our table. So let's go into our table. Here we go. Now we want to create a new table now, in which we'll have a column which will be not null, right? So now let's create a table. Create table, table name, let's name it as department. Now we have to write the column names. Now let's say we want to create column names having, let's say, department ID. Okay, which has to be int, fine, and then we want to keep it as not null also. Okay, comma, we want to have department name, DPT name. We can name it as DEPT ID, that will be easier. DEPT ID. Okay, int and not nil. Department name has to be varchar. And we can have a HOD of the department maybe, which will again be varchar. That's fine, doesn't matter. Okay, so now we can create this table and then insert data into the table and see what issues we'll get if we are not, just a second, if we are not entering values into the DEPT ID. Okay. Here we go. successfully created. If now I do select star from table, then I'll get 0 entries. I'll just show you. Select star from department. Okay. So if I just run this query, I'll get 0 entries because I don't have anything right now. The table is all empty. So let's insert data into this table. So we will quickly insert into table name, which is department. Now only we have to mention whatever columns we have. So let's say we have DEPT ID, comma, DEPT name, comma, HOD. Okay, these are the column names, and accordingly values will insert. So let's say the values are 1 is the department ID, comma, the department name is manual testing, first department, and somebody is the HOD of that department. Let's say the HOD's name is Karan or Kripa, let's say. Okay, so we are trying to insert data, so it will be inserted, of course. Let's run this query and then check if the data is inserted correctly. It got successfully executed. So if I just quickly run select star, I can see this data. Now I'll do the same thing, but I'll not enter. I'll run insert query again, but I will just show you without entering the not null column, which is DEPT ID. Let me remove this DEPT ID. Let me remove this. Let the department name be security testing this time, and the person name be Varun, and HOD, and we're not entering the ID. So we'll get an error. Now when I run this, what we're trying to do, we are trying to insert data into a table which has a column which is not null, and we are trying to not enter any data for that column. So let's see what happens. We'll get an error. The error says, so there is insert in department, error code, field DEPT ID doesn't have a default value. So you have to enter this positively. So you have to just, let's say 2 is the department ID, comma, yeah. So when I run this, it will now execute because I have inserted value for the column which was not null. So if I just run select star, it will be inserted. Yeah, so the value got inserted. Now if I do the same thing with other columns, which is, let's say, department name, if I just leave it, don't enter anything. I'll just show you one more time just to make it very clear. I'll enter department ID, which is 3, but and let me enter the name also, but I don't want to enter any HOD right now. This query will execute fine because HOD is not having any restrictions. So if I just run this, it got executed perfectly fine, and I'll just do a select star, and you'll see that instead of HOD, or in place of the HOD column, the value which got inserted is null. So here null is as a value in the result set, and here when you are trying to actually create a table using the null keyword, it's null as a keyword. So both differences are very clear. Null as a value, null as a keyword. Let's move forward and see what else we have to study. Now we are going to learn something very interesting, which is alter command. Alter is used to add any column onto the table, or remove that column, drop that column actually, or rename the column. So when we are, alter is a DDL statement, so we'll learn the differences, but just to understand, here we are actually not playing with the data, we're playing with the schema. So alter, drop and rename, all these are DDL statements. Alter command will be used to add or remove any columns into our table. Let's say we want to insert a new column. Let's say we want to insert a column which is gender into our table. So we can do that using alter column. We'll see that. So So what is the syntax and all, everything. So the syntax is alter, then table, and then table name. Why table? It's a DDL command. So in the DDL, we are seeing that we use the keywords, right? So create table, table name. Similarly, alter table, then the table name. And then you have to write a keyword called add. And now what you want to add? Column. So add column and then the column name. And you have to, of course, mention the data type of the column, because while creating, you're mentioning the data type. So when you're adding, you have to tell the data type of the column as well. So alter table, table name, add column, column name, and the data type. So that's how you're going to add one column, which will have all null values in the beginning, because you're trying to add a column. Let's add a column and see what happens. Let's add column to our employee table. We can do that. So if I just quickly run select star from employee, you'll be seeing all the ID, first name, last name, email ID, address, salary, and department. We'll add another column which is gender. Okay, so the query is alter table. What is the table name? Employee. Add column. Column name is gender, and we want to keep it as Wildcard, isn't it? Wildcard some 5, 6, whatever you want to mention. Okay, so let's run this and we'll see that a gender new column is created. So it got successfully executed. There's a green tick here. So if I again run this query, you will see that it has a new column gender with all entries as null, because we didn't enter anything as such now, but we have mentioned the data type and all that. So you have to remember, while adding any column, you have to mention the data type also. Okay, and you have to also remember you have to add keywords like table and column, because it is a DDL statement. Okay, alter table, table name, add column, column name, and then the data type. Anyways, let's move forward. And so we have seen how to add column. We can also remove it. So let me just quickly show you. Okay, so removing will be done using the drop command. Drop command is used to remove that particular column from the table. Okay, the drop command is used to delete a database from the MySQL server, delete an object also like table, column from the database, right? So it can delete a complete database, or it can also delete a particular table or a column using drop command. So for using drop command to remove a column, what we do, alter table, then the table name, and drop column and the column name. So in that case, the entire column and its data will be deleted. Okay, so let's run this and see. We'll remove a new column which we create. Okay, now just a second, I'll show you quickly how to. What we'll do, we'll not remove gender. Let's keep gender. We'll add one more column and then remove it so that it's double. Okay, we can just use the gender column actually. So alter table, and table name is employee. Here we'll add, we want to add first. Okay, add column. Let's imagine we added a column like it's employee, right? So we can add phone number. Phone number is not there, right? So mobile number, which is int, and we'll run this, and when we see select star from employee, we'll see that a new column is created which is mobile and with all null entries, of course. So we can drop it also. So how do we drop it? Alter table, table name. So table name is employee. Drop column name. So what is the column you want to drop? You want to drop mobile column, isn't it? So when you just run this, it will be successfully executed. And now when you do select star from table name, you will not be able to see the mobile column because you have already dropped it. All its data is also dropped and the column is also dropped. So that's how drop keyword is used. Alter table name and drop the column name, whichever you want to drop it. It's yet another DDL statement. Okay, going back to the PPT. So drop is used for deleting a database from the server or objects like table and columns. It can also actually delete a whole table. Okay, so if you want to see only the columns, it's just a command. So if you just want to see the columns, show columns from the table name. So let's run this once. Show columns from employee. Show columns will actually show us whatever columns are available in that particular table. So it's clearly showing first name, last name, email address, salary, department and gender. So there's no mobile. Okay, we can do the same thing for the department. Show columns from department, department. So we can just use this to see what all columns are there. Show columns, then the show columns from the table. So we have 3: department ID, name and HOD, so that it is showing us. Okay, defaults are also there. Null, no. So it's saying is null yes. So no, it has to be not null. So that's why the null is no. Anyways, let's move back to the PPT one more time. Drop table. If you want to drop the table, not just the column, you want to drop the table. So the syntax is drop table and table name. If you do that, your entire table will be dropped, right? Drop table and table name. Okay, so we'll not drop the table because we want to use them, so we'll not drop it, but you can use it. Drop table and table name. Remember to use the keyword table because it's a DDL statement. Drop table, table name. Rename, like let's say you want to change the name of the column, you don't like the name of the column, so you want to change it. So you can again do it using a command which is called rename command, which is yet another DDL statement. So rename, okay, let's say it's changing the table name. So rename table, then the current table name to new table name. So table keyword is being used, rename, then the table keyword, and then the current table name to whatever new table name you want to assign it to. So you can mention that. So old to new. So that will be the use of rename command. So we don't want to change the table names right now. So we can just use it. Rename table and then current to new. So it is yet another DDL statement. That's why you're also using the keyword here. So we have seen that how alter command is used to add any columns into our table, or remove that column from the table, or remove the entire table, and also rename the column name or the table name. So these are the usages of alter, drop, rename commands. Very important to remember. DDL statements. Okay, so that is about it. So that's all from today's session. In the next session, we'll learn more about how to use limits, and how can we just limit our data sets which are shown as the results, and how can we only see some data from the entire list of the table if you want to do like that. And there are many more concepts coming in, like using all different kind of keys, then using joins, union and everything onto the table. So for now, we'll just stop here. Thank you.